and I was told I wasn't attractive enough for Sky Sports News.
Emerging in a male-dominated industry, regardless of extreme trolling on social channels, Bianca Westwood became the first female football anchor on Sky Sports.
I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages from men telling me I was useless, I was ugly. They were telling me I knew nothing about football, which annoyed me more than if they told me I looked ugly. Who gives a what some stranger who I don't know says about me?
And with the deepest wounds, it takes an incredible person to prevail. From feelings of impending doom to inner peace. Somehow, in this interview, Bianca kept it together and shared her incredible story.
We had a very, very, very difficult childhood. The way I used to see it was it's selfish that people want me to stick around when I'm in a living hell.
If you hadn't have had therapy, what would have happened?
Oh my God, now I'm going to cry.
With the proudest moment on TV, West Ham beating Man United in their last match at Upton Park. I challenge you to turn her success into your success.
Was that one of the best days of your life?
Yeah.
What was it like challenging Piers Morgan on his own show?
Let's do this.
Kind of chilled out a little bit.
So I went to therapy and I learned how to chill out.
I think sometimes as women in football, it's a very fine line between wanting to look nice and not wanting to be overtly attractive or sexual to viewers because of the comments and stuff that you would get. So, you know, especially when I first started in the business, women had to look good.
Yeah.
Especially in the studio, presenters and stuff like that. I didn't have to care about that too much because, as I say, I was outside with the big coats on. But I kind of let that side of my life fall away a little bit, and I just concentrated on the football and not caring too much about the way I looked on screen. And it was always it was a very judgy place.
It was. It is. I mean, I worked with Gabby Logan last year, and she said that women can be scrutinised for how they look.
Yeah.
And there's a trap that you can take that negatively. And have you ever done that?
I did when I did a screen test many, many years ago, and I was told I wasn't attractive enough for Sky Sports News. And part of me was like...
Is that the word they used?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Part of me was like, well, why do I have to be attractive? Because there's some unattractive men on there. But also I was like, oh, I thought I wasn't too bad looking. Yeah. But apparently at that time I was told there has to be a certain symmetry to your face as a woman, and I didn't have that.
Right.
So it's interesting that years later I ended up kind of in a box with just my face, like facing forward to screen, and it didn't really matter if my one eyebrow's higher than the other.
Has the world changed for the better now or not?
I don't know. Probably. It's not as bad as it used to be. You don't have to be ultra attractive to present anymore.
There's a bit of like even you know, shame on Sky Sports for that kind of thing, you know, for you, because I feel that as you're saying it, and I think the rest of society is that way inclined. You look at football and someone says a racist comment and, you know, the media pick up on it, that person's losing the job the next day. It's changing gradually. I
think women are still fair game, though. You only have to look at what's happened recently with the talking about female pundits and everything that's come with that. Women are still fair game. You can say what you like to a woman or about a woman, and it's not criminal for a start. So you can get away with it. Whereas if you racially abuse someone,
you can't.
No.
Right. So sexism is racism. That we're tackling that better than we are on sexism. Then
I don't know if we're tackling that better because it still exists and it's still there and it's still a huge problem. And I can't speak for people who are racially abused.
When you say recently, are you referring to Joey Barton? Yeah, I mean, when he was interviewed, do you think they pulled that out of him to say that, or was that genuinely from him?
Well, it was genuinely from him because it was a tweet that I didn't even see initially, the one that said women shouldn't talk with any kind of authority. That was it, on football. And it was like the women thing that kind of got me. And I was like, well, you know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, whatever it is, even if it's extreme. I just let people be. However, I think Laura Woods kind of responded to that, and I thought to myself, well, I disagree, because it's women. Women can talk about football, and we do talk about football, and we've been watching football since we were children. So that was wrong. And that's pretty much why I got involved. And obviously Piers Morgan asked me to be on his show personally, so I couldn't really turn that down. Otherwise, I wouldn't have really responded to him myself. I wouldn't have given that any kind of dignity, because it doesn't deserve it.
You did respond, though, with strength. And I got to take my hat off to you. Like Piers Morgan, I've watched the stuff. You've challenged Piers really hard yourself. You openly challenged him on his own show. And that takes strength. Where do you get that strength from?
A very strong mum from the East End, brought us up as a single parent, 4 kids, and brothers, basically, surrounded by brothers growing up. So I always...
How many brothers did you have?
Well, I've got 5 brothers. 2 of them were my dad's children, 3 of them. My mum and dad basically split up when I was 2, and my mum remarried and had 3 boys, and my dad remarried and had 2.
Wow.
So I was always, I mean, the last 2 brothers, I actually kind of threw a diva fit because I wanted a sister. And my mum came in and she was like, oh, look. And I was like, no, threw myself on the bed.
So wait, let's just check out the family for a second. So you're a West Ham fan.
Yeah.
What about your brothers?
Well, that's a different story entirely. I've got 2 West Ham brothers, 1 Arsenal, because he decided at about 12 years old he didn't want to support West Ham anymore because he was sick of us keep being relegated every season. And on my dad's side, 1 Chelsea, 1 Tottenham. So it's...
Everyone's in London, though. Everyone's in London.
Yeah.
So, every weekend's a fun weekend.
Yes.
So, what you said you got your strength from your mum. Have you had that all your life?
Yes, I have. We had a very, very, very difficult childhood, and I can't sort of, it's no exaggeration, it was traumatic at times. So when you have to survive that, you can kind of survive anything, and what people sort of throw at you, it doesn't affect you as deeply as it would someone else who hasn't been through it.
When you said it a challenging childhood, can you give us any more on that or not?
Yeah, I can. It's fine. I mean, it seems like so long ago now, but so my real dad had multiple sclerosis.
Right.
So that was always very challenging. When I used to visit him, he was obviously in a really bad way as I was growing up. My mum and stepdad had a very volatile relationship, mainly because he was a compulsive gambler. We lost our home. He ended up going to prison. He used to steal our property, like our, Christmas presents on Christmas Eve used to go missing. My mum would be frantic and hysterical, and it was just always a very kind of, there was a thin line between, oh, we're okay, and no, everything is absolutely shit. So when you're growing up like that, it's kind of really, you become used to living on the edge, basically, and it makes you strong. So at the time, I hated it and it was awful. But now I'm not pleased that I went through all of that, but it kind of made me the person that I am. Yeah,
and you've been incredibly successful. I mean, what do you attribute your success down to? Personal strength or more than that?
I think some of it is inherent in you, because some people, you can't make people want to achieve things and ambition and stuff like that. But my main driving force, and this is going to sound awful, and I've never said this to her before, so I hope she doesn't watch this, I just didn't want to end up like my mum. And that was it.
Which bit's your mum?
being lied to, cheated on, stolen from, you know, on your own, struggling, not a single pot to piss in, loads of kids, you know, always in trauma, fight or flight mode. Then when she finally, the divorce finally happened, she ended up becoming an alcoholic. I mean, it's all kind of sounds like one big sob story, but it's not, because we've moved on from that and we're all in a good place now. But it's the journey kind of was very difficult.
But in a strange way, she did give you that drive and determination. You didn't want that.
I know, yeah.
You know,
it's just an awful way of sort of going about it, isn't it?
It sounds.
I'm sure she'd be hurt by that.
I don't know, but look how successful you've been, and she's been your driver. She's helped you. You know, in some ways, she might be proud of that. She might be
I think she probably is. Yeah,
I'm really pleased that you have done something good because of this. You know, she might be really emotional watching it. You never know.
Or she might be really defensive.
Well, look,
knowing her, she's a very strong. Although she's not. She's softened quite a lot.
You later became the first female pundit on Sky Sports for football. First, you changed it. You changed the game for everyone. Gabby Logan and Claire Balding.
Well, Gabby was doing her, not the same job, but she was still involved in football at the time. But she had already left to go to ITV, I think, or BBC, I can't remember which. But she was at Sky before me, I think. She worked on Skysportsnews. But I think she found the same kind of, you know, coming up against the glass ceiling or whatever you want to call it. And that's probably why she left. I know Claire Tomlinson had a difficult time. But she was the first touchline reporter, the first female touchline reporter. And, you know, there's this whole thing now with representation matters, and it really does, because if it hadn't been for Claire Tomlinson, I wouldn't have seen a female reporter for football. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know you could do that.
When you first saw her, what was going through your mind?
Well, Claire was different in the sense that she wasn't sort of like the perfectly made up, you know, she was very attractive, but she didn't kind of wear all the clothes and the makeup, and the hair wasn't done. She was standing on the touchline and in the wind and the rain, and she was speaking really eloquently and with such knowledge about football. I just thought, oh, hold on a minute. She was the only woman who'd done that before. There was no one before her. So I kind of was like, I see. A kind of light bulb moment. I could do that.
Look, it was tough growing up. You got a lot of strength from that, and your mum is being your biggest driver. Is she still your biggest driver, or have you got something else now?
I don't know. There's just something where I just can't stop and relax. And even you saying, oh, you know, you're the first woman and you did that. It's kind of... It's only recently since I left Sky that I look back and other female reporters have said to me, you were my inspiration. I was like, whoa, really? Me? I just felt like I was a football fan who ended up reporting. Do you know what I mean? I didn't see myself as this really kind of serious broadcast journalist or presenter, or I was just a girl from Chingford who loved football, who ended up...
Did you always love football?
Yeah.
What was your biggest learning then of growing up?
My biggest learning, that's a really difficult one. There's so much. I guess mainly watching my dad suffer in such a despicable way. It's kind of like make every second count.
Right.
You know. And
do you do that?
I try to, yeah. People always message me on Instagram and say, how do you do it? Why don't you stop? Why don't you relax? Why don't you...
I watched it, you know. I really do believe that people should go and visit your Instagram page.
Thank you. It was interesting when I started doing it, the football fans weren't happy with it and they were like, stick to the football. And I was like, that's a first.
Yeah. Have you had any negative comments on social media?
About the fashion or about anything?
About anything, you know.
Oh, God, yeah. Not so much anymore.
Why is that?
Because I think the main thing about, if I'm talking about football fans, there's a lot of fear attached with a male football fan, and they would probably say, what on earth are you talking about? But it's the fear of the unknown. So when I became the first female football reporter, it was like, they didn't know me. They hadn't heard a female voice before. They'd heard Jackie Oatley on Match of the Day, but she was also terrorised, and didn't end up sort of taking that.
Can you give
forward.
us an example of being terrorised, just so that the listeners can empathise with this? So just give us the warts and alls here.
So when I first did my first few match reports, I was obviously completely new to live broadcasting, and it wasn't well received. So I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages from men telling me I was shit, I was useless, I was old, I was ugly, I knew F all about football, who was I sleeping with, who was I, how did I get this job? I must be...
Did you read it all?
Yes, because then, we're talking 2012, so Twitter was kind of still very new, and you would read the messages and you didn't realise the damage that could do, So I did read it, and I used to search for my name, which is a ridiculous thing to do. I would never do that now. Self-preservation.
Is that what you've learned?
Yeah, and I've also learned who gives a shit what some stranger who I don't know says about me. And I genuinely, if I could give anyone a gift, it would be indifference, which is what I have now.
What do you mean?
I don't care. I'm indifferent to people's opinions of me. I honestly don't care what you think I am, how good you think I am, or how rubbish you think I am. I know in myself that I've had a good career, and I know my talents, and I know, my failures, or what I'm not good at, and what I'm not, my strengths and my weaknesses. But at that time, they were telling me I knew nothing about football, which annoyed me more than if they told me I looked ugly. There was some guy who said I looked like a lipstick being put on a pig, something like that. There was another guy who led a campaign against me and would tweet Sky every single day.
He led a campaign?
Yeah, it was called Bianca Westwood.
Well, at least you're laughing about it.
I didn't laugh at the time because the effect it had on me was that I was so new to it. I'd only been doing this for a couple of months. I couldn't sleep before a game.
How did you perform?
I kind of didn't really the first few months. I was probably awful. It was like a vicious circle because I couldn't sleep. And because I couldn't sleep, I'd have zero sleep. I'd go to a game. I'd be so conscious of what I was saying. I knew I couldn't slip up.
If you hadn't have performed, did they cut you?
Well, they did actually take me off games for a couple of weeks because I was so stressed with it.
Right.
And they said that my producer at the time, I said to him, look, don't do that because I will never improve unless I keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Get through it. He was like, no, I think you should take a step back. So I took a step back, not for very long, a few months maybe. But then when I came back, I kind of just threw myself into it.
What happened to the person that was the ringleader of Bianca Westwood?
So, funnily enough, I wasn't getting much support from Sky at the time. I turned to Troy Townsend, head of Kick It Out. And, I've told him a million times this. He was my saviour. He basically contacted Twitter, got all of the accounts taken down because there are a lot of people, and some were women, fathers with daughters in their profile pictures. And I'd say to them, how could you do that when you have a daughter? How could you abuse someone like this when someone might do that to your daughter one day? How could you speak to a woman like that? Someone you don't know. Anyone, not just a woman. It's just... but a lot of them were just spiteful. And it did affect me for a while, but I didn't let it affect me forever.
What advice have you got for young females going into the career moving forward around this subject?
Around social media?
Yeah.
My advice is, I mean, it's very difficult because it's all with feelings are attached. How can you tell someone not to feel? It's very difficult, but that would be my advice. You know, do not let someone's opinion of you affect you negatively, affect your emotions, affect your day. It really does mean nothing. It means nothing. But how can you tell someone how to feel? Because the girl from Manchester City who made a tiny error, I think. I can't remember exactly what the error was while she was doing the social media thing. And she got absolutely hounded. I can't tell her not to be upset by that. But that's why I would love to give the gift of indifference to young people. Because why would you let someone who you've never met before, never likely to meet, who's probably sitting at home in his pants, you know, happy people, successful people, ambitious people, people who strive to do good things in life, they don't troll other people. You know, only haters do, and haters are always pretty much losers. So why would you care about what a loser thinks?
It's your way of looking at it, it's your perspective, isn't it?
Mm.
And there's a mindset there. Did you have to learn that mindset yourself? Or did you learn that in your childhood with all of the resilience that you had to develop?
I think a lot of that comes with age.
Experience.
Yeah.
So you got to experience it.
I think maybe you have to. And then, like anything, it's like you said, if it's a wound, it becomes a scar and it doesn't hurt anymore.
I interviewed Dr. Linda Shaw, a neuroscientist, and she actually said all emotions are good. All emotions are good, whether it's fear, whether it's anxiety, they're just energy. And it's what you do with them. You know, sometimes you get anxious because the building's on fire and you're supposed to be anxious right now.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have that emotion. It's just what you do with them after 2 minutes. You know, after the 2 minutes, how is this serving me now? What's it telling me to do? It's how you respond. And
you have to learn how to do that, though, because emotions are very difficult to control. Anxiety is, anger is. I mean, I had a year of therapy when I was 42.
What changed from that?
What, after therapy?
Yeah.
It was just like I'd taken off a cloak, because I'd suffered from depression. I didn't grieve my father's passing. That was it. I didn't grieve that for about 10 years, and I think that was my biggest mistake. I just threw myself into wrong relationships, career, kind of just getting on. And then 10 years later, it just, everything came down, and I was very, very close to doing something stupid. I sort of...
When was this?
I think I was about 41. A relationship ended, and it wasn't because of the relationship ending. I think that was the catalyst. It was kind of... It all just came tumbling out, you know, the grief. And I spent a lot of time fantasizing about not existing anymore. And that made me feel better. So I was like, okay, so if I want, I can do that. That will be my out. And people always say about, I don't want to trigger anyone or anything like that, but they always say, you know, it's selfish. And it is in a way, but the way I used to see it was, it's selfish that people want me to stick around when I am actually I'm in a living hell.
How did you get out of it then? To the therapy?
Therapy, yeah.
Talking?
And probably looking at my family and thinking I couldn't do it. I mean, my mum's been through so much. I couldn't. I'm going to have to just get through it, get over it, you know. And I don't know, I found the strength from somewhere.
Is your mum still here?
Yeah.
And do you still see her?
Yeah. She lives in Spain, but I do still see her, yeah.
Look, it's obviously it's emotional. It's one of the deepest. It's one of the worst kind of thoughts that you can have. That
I know.
And obviously, I know people that have been in similar situations, but you've prevailed. If you hadn't have had therapy, what would have happened?
I don't know. I really don't know. My therapist was brilliant because I could say anything and there would be no judgment whatsoever. So, and I think that's very freeing, because sometimes you don't want to say things out loud to people that you know and love, because they might think either you're weird or horrible or
it's an incredible
evil.
skill, though, isn't it? That to remove judgment.
Yeah. But he didn't think I was a bad person for some of the things that I was telling him. He just, I don't know. I don't know how he did it. I mean, that's why he's a therapist. He just made me feel like it was okay to have these emotions. But he also called me out on my bullshit as well. Especially in terms of relationships. He said I was living in a fantasy. And the sooner I let that fantasy go.
How did he say it? How brutal?
Like that. You're living in a fantasy. I'd be like, no, I'm not. Some people do have like happy marriages and relationships and blah, blah, blah. He said, yeah, but what you want is a fantasy. It doesn't exist.
And did the coin drop at that point?
Yeah.
Instantly?
No.
How long
later.
Late that night or late that month or?
I don't know when it did. I was quite indignant when he said that. I didn't believe him at first. But then with time, I was like, no, it's right. People do... Relationships aren't perfect. And I'd always thought that they should be. We talked about abandonment issues, obviously because of my dad and stuff like that. And which was why I was choosing very, people that were wrong for me. So it was like, I don't know. I realised that there is still beauty in imperfection. And if someone says or does the wrong thing, doesn't mean I have to get away from this person. People make mistakes, people annoy you, but you can still be in a happy relationship with them.
It's quite fortunate, you've reminded me of my dad a little bit. One thing that my dad always said to me as I was growing up, look, the world is supposed to be imperfect. There isn't one tree in the world that's symmetrical.
Exactly.
Because that would be perfect.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be. And when you realise that, what happens? When you realise that the world wasn't perfect?
I became more tolerant.
Of
other people.
All right. It didn't hurt you anymore? All right.
No. I became softer, I think.
Softer about what?
About what I demanded of people, of relationships, of...
Right.
I kind of chilled out a little bit.
So I went to therapy and I learned how to chill out.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
I could be very highly strung.
But you resisted at first. This is what you were saying about, you called you out on your bullshit.
Yeah.
And you resisted it, but then it gradually, and then you learned to chill out. How long were you seeing a therapist?
About a year.
Do you think everybody should see a therapist?
If I could afford it, I would still do it. But it's very expensive, unfortunately.
Well, it is when you're seeing the world's best. Were you seeing the world's best?
It was pretty good, yeah. But it was being paid for by my insurance at the time with Sky.
Right.
Because I was at such a point, I basically said I need to see someone otherwise. I threatened them, basically. And that's why they gave me the sessions. And it was remarkable, really. You work on your body, you hone it to perfection, and yet people walk around with these fucked up minds, and they don't pay any attention to what's going on up there. And it's more important than how your body looks, really.
Is a problem shared, a problem halved? Some kind of myth there, isn't it? Does it reduce
massively? Because I tried to explain to friends at the time and they just didn't get it.
A problem shared with the right person is a problem reduced. Do you agree or disagree?
But, yeah, with the right person, because people who are emotionally attached to you, they're not looking at it from a neutral perspective. They know your history, they know why you're feeling like that. Whereas someone who is completely kind of black and white will sit there and he'll hear these things, or she will hear these things, and come at it from a completely detached viewpoint.
If you could go back and do it all again, anything you'd do different?
What, with my career?
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to sound ridiculous, right? I'd have elocution lessons.
I once got told I needed to do that. Obviously, I've got a Yorkshire accent as well, so
yeah,
I'm speaking as posh as I can right now. So you'd have elocution lessons?
Yes, because I was told, when I was 16, I worked at Radio 1, and there was a producer there, and he said to me, you know, you're obviously a very talented, intelligent young lady, but you need to get rid of that accent. You'll never have a career in TV or, you know, broadcasting.
But you knew at 16 that's what you wanted?
I didn't, but it was like a Saturday, Sunday job. It was a friend of my mum's who she worked with, so I was answering phones.
Did your mum help you get into that?
She did, yeah. Yeah, she did. She
so
knew
not only is she being your biggest driver, she helped you into presenting and broadcasting.
She helped me into that job, yeah. I didn't go from that to broadcasting. There was, I was in investment banking for a little bit when I graduated. But yeah, so that job,
Well, again, that teaches you a lot of skills as well for life, doesn't it?
It really does. But the guy said to me, you'll never have a top career in broadcasting if you speak like that. And I became very indignant and cocky. I was like,
You wanted to prove him wrong?
Yeah.
But did it stop you getting in? A thick accent?
It held me back, definitely. And I think I probably would have got better jobs if I'd had elocution lessons, yeah.
But somehow you got top jobs.
I did, but they would never let me present, put it that way. I would never be in a studio. I would never kind of be able to present the news with this accent. That's changing also, which is brilliant. You know, social mobility, they all talk about it, how important it is and stuff. And they were talking about it when I was at Sky, and not just Sky, BBC as well. But they don't really, a lot of the time, they don't really mean it. You know, it's like the people who were getting the jobs were the very well-spoken ones from middle class backgrounds, pretty much. But you could be a reporter, and that's okay. But presenting was just never something that they would ever let me do.
Fashion, beauty, travel, food, football. We're going over all of these. So beauty. When you look in the mirror, what do you see?
I see a woman who's getting a bit older.
Yeah, but you're laughing and smiling about it.
Well, because what am I going to do?
Do you know what? The first thing I thought when you walked in, obviously I'd done this. I was like, wow, you look young.
Thank you. But I don't, there's this whole movement now, and because I'm in this industry, there's this whole movement about I don't need to look young, I just need to look good. And I think that's important as well.
When you look in the mirror, do you see someone that looks good? I
do now, yeah. There were many years where I didn't think that was the case.
What did you see when you looked in the mirror?
That's a really difficult one to answer because it's hard to... Growing up in the 80s as a young girl was very, very different. And actually, it's probably not. It's probably worse now with social media and stuff like that. And young girls having to use filters and all of that. But the culture surrounding what it meant to be a woman, young girl, it was all around weight and beauty, and you have to look a certain way. So I didn't necessarily think that I was pretty enough. And, you know, I dived right in to the whole positive affirmations. You know, I read Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life is like my Bible.
You Can Heal Your Life.
Yeah, that was my Bible when I was going through like the lowest of the low points.
Did you literally go through every word, underline it?
Yeah.
Post-it notes?
Yeah, all of that.
On the mirror,
I was
affirmations.
desperate. I was desperate. I was like, I have to be okay.
What did you say in the mirror? Come on, say it.
I'd say I am strong, I am powerful, I am good enough. Everything is happening perfectly. That's my mantra, that one. So if I'm feeling a little bit, everything is happening perfectly.
I learned this from a book. The voice in your head, which is an affirmation, if you're not saying it in the mirror, you're still saying it. So the voice in your head is the biggest performance-enhancing drug in your life. And so when you looked in the mirror... Or
the opposite.
Yeah, or the biggest performance-debilitating drug.
Yeah.
You choose.
Exactly. And you can choose, unless you have kind of like a chemical imbalance or something like that.
Right.
Because then that's very difficult to overcome without, especially going through menopause, which is another, you know.
Yeah, you spoke about that a little bit as well. Gabby's spoke about that a lot.
Yeah, and I think women should speak about it. I think it's, I mean, I didn't really know it was coming. Bizarrely, you just...
Creeps up on you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Shit.
I was like, what?
Do you
My
know?
mum said it might be the menopause, perimenopause. I was like, you've got to be joking. Oh, hold on. How old am I? Oh, yeah, it might be.
Yeah, well...
But see, my mum, when she went through menopause, she became an alcoholic. But I always said it was because she had post-traumatic stress. And she probably did. But it coincided with her menopause. Now we've, like, looked back and gone, Whereas I don't have that drinking gene. I have a few drinks I don't really want anymore. But my mum comes from a very big drinking family, so that was her way of coping. I was just, again, I've got to the depths of despair and I was like, I cannot live like this for the rest of my life.
I cannot, I will not.
I will not.
Was that an active decision?
Yeah.
And you were saying that to yourself in your head, I will not live like this.
Yeah.
At what point? In perimenopause?
Yeah, so I'd been going through it for about probably a lot longer than I know, but consciously probably about a year to 6 months, forgetting things, anxiety, which I'd never had before, like extreme anxiety, impending doom, like physical feeling, and no amount of affirmations could make me feel better, you know. And then memory loss. I forgot Lucas Fabianski's name live on air. And Jeff and the boys pissed themselves laughing, thought it was hilarious. This was the last day of the season as well. And this is my team. So how can I forget? I was going, Lucas, mate, look, like that. And then I just kind of like moved on. And they all were laughing. I went home and cried my eyes out. Because I was like, shit, am I losing my mind? Have I got early onset dementia? Because both my grandmothers had dementia. What will I do? Like, I won't be able to work anymore. Like, you know, with the anxiety as well. And it was only kind of when Davina McCall started talking about it and Gabby, we had this big kind of epiphany, me and my mum. Because I'd asked her, like, did you go through menopause? Can't remember. She was drunk. So I went to the doctor and they didn't want to give me anything because there's a real lack of education in, you know, the medical profession over here and in the States as well about HRT. And I basically threatened her and said, you have to, otherwise I will not live like this for the rest of my life. I just won't. And I'd had a pulmonary embolism when I was 20. So they were a bit like...
Right.
They didn't want to give it to me. But I was like, I'd rather be dead than live like this. So I'd rather have another blood clot and die. That's how I feel. She was like, okay then. Let's write you a prescription, Bianca.
And you got the prescription.
Yeah.
It helped.
It completely changed my life.
You know, that impending doom that you said, the way you said it, you know, is that what it felt like?
Yeah, it felt like... It's really difficult to describe anxiety like that. It's like something bad is happening. And it's like that 24/7. And there are other... I never got the hot sweats or anything like that. all of those kind of symptoms that people laugh about. I didn't get that. I found it very difficult to exist. And obviously because of my job, I didn't want to tell anybody because they would think I was weak. And I didn't want to give anyone the, how do I say this? Because men don't think women should be in football anyway. So I didn't want them to give them any ammunition.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
And that's what I thought it would do.
And you're over that now?
Yeah. I still had, my memory's still a bit shaky sometimes, but everything else has gone. Completely gone.
What's in your diet that keeps you motivated?
Chocolate. I eat far too much of it. But again, with menopause, I put on a hell of a lot of weight. And I do think you can be any size you want. I don't think people should be a certain size. However, for myself, I wasn't happy with the size I was. I wasn't eating anymore. It literally, my metabolism just ground to a halt. And I was very uncomfortable for a while. I was bulimic when I was 15, so I was always kind of conscious of not going back.
For how long?
Those. I was bullied at school, and so they used to say I was fat. So I think from 15 to probably about 17, but the doctor said I would get seriously ill if I continued, and my teeth would fall out, and that stopped me, the teeth thing.
Did you lose a lot of weight?
Yeah. I saw the same girls who bullied me actually a few years after I left school, and they were like, oh my God, what happened to you? Not like I was fat, it was a bit puppy fat maybe. Like I was just probably at size 10, but you know what it's like with young girls at school. They were evil.
There's plenty of people are bulimic right now. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
And how would you deal with it differently, knowing with the skills that you've got now?
That's a difficult question as well, because I do eat what I want now, but there is always that. For me now, it's like a grain of sand, the guilt when I eat something. Whereas it used to be like a desert.
It's always there, when you wire in your brain, they reckon that once there's a neural pathway built, it's built.
Yeah.
It ain't going.
No, exactly.
You just got to build another one that's stronger.
Yeah.
Let's talk football. What's the best memory of working in the football industry?
I would say probably hosting the last game at Upton Park. That was huge for me, because, it was a big deal, and it was a presenting gig as well, which I said didn't come around very often. But because I'm like Mrs. West Ham, obviously I had to do it. So we presented, Ben Shepherd and I, on the pitch. I interviewed Trevor Booking, Paolo Di Canio. It was a brilliant result as well. We beat Man United. It was just the feeling that was in the ground. It was just a magical night. It was so good.
Is that one of the best days of your life?
Yeah, that was a great night.
What was going through your veins during the match?
Well, I was so kind of focused on what I had to do after the game, because that was when it was all going to happen. But I felt, it was such a good night. I had permanent goosebumps. I felt really important that night. Like I had arrived, like I'd made it, and I'd never felt that before really. I'd had some good jobs and stuff like that, but this meant something else. I was presenting with Ben Shepherd, which was a cool thing to do. And I knew what was happening in the game, and it was like a fairy tale, the way we scored the winner and stuff like that. And it was perfect, the final farewell. But I was just so focused on what I had to do. And the organisation wasn't great, to be honest with you, because all the players, I had to go into the stands and interview players on full time. And unfortunately, the players got up and left, like all the old, like Trevor Sinclair and Frank McAviney and all those kinds of guys. And I just had visions of them cutting to me in the stand, standing on my own, and I had no one to talk to. So I literally grabbed Anton Ferdinand and Marlon Harewood and I went, "You are not going anywhere. Stay here." And they stayed, and then we did the interview, and it was going out live. I just, oh God, that's like a nightmare come true.
But you'd arrived. That was your moment.
Yeah, that was my moment. And I felt like pure self-satisfaction. I'd never had that before. But I also remembered that little girl who was standing just down there at 11 years old. And if she had seen what she was going to be capable of, oh my God, now I'm going to cry. Yeah.
It's a good moment, that.
But that's not sadness. That's like...
pride.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine you going back to that 11-year-old girl now.
I know.
Taking all the bad bits away. And just saying to the little girl,
one day.
Go for it.
Yeah, one day you are going to be standing up there interviewing, Frank McAviney, who was like my idol at the time. I didn't know Paolo Di Canio was then. I knew Sir Trevor Booking was, but that's something Louise Hay actually does say. You should speak to your inner child and be kind to your inner child and listen and feel empathy because of everything that you've been through since, because that inner child, that little girl, I mean, she went through a hell of a lot. You need to take care of that child better than you were actually taken care of by the adults who are supposed to do that. And I think that's what she meant by that.
yeah, well, that 11-year-old girl's you. Look at all the stuff you've accomplished now.
Mm.
Do you deserve it?
Yeah, I've worked since I was 14 years old in some form or another. So I lied and said I was 16 so I could get a job in Superdrug.
You definitely deserve it after the story you've shared with us here today. Let's go back in football. I mean, it has changed now, hasn't it? There's a lot of females in football.
There are a lot.
And it's only growing.
Yeah.
And even the case in Spain.
I mean, what, the kiss?
The case, I mean, that's really promoting now females in football as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that was just an unbelievable thing to do.
Yeah, it feels like a bit of a fork in the road, that. It feels like a bit of things have changed since that now.
Absolutely. Because men could be very handsy, even with me. And I think I didn't get too much of that because I must give off some sense of, don't you dare.
Don't you mess with me.
Yeah, I must do. People have called me aggressive before, and I don't like that because it's quite negative.
Why do you think they called you aggressive?
Because I guess I say what I think, and I'm very forthright. But someone I'm working with at the moment said I was fierce, and I prefer that. It's a bit kind of Sasha Fierce Beyonce, whereas aggressive makes it sound like I'm shouting at people and being nasty, where I'm not.
Who's your favourite football pundit?
Pundit?
Commentator, pundit?
Probably Roy Keane.
Why?
Same reason, just assertive, says what he thinks.
I mean, it's sometimes like this, isn't it? He just waits to be spoken to and then
I think he plays on his hard man routine a little bit now, though. But I like that. He's definitely got a twinkle in his eye. And he's probably got more of a sense of humour than he... I don't know, I didn't know him back then, but he wasn't really... People didn't kind of give him any credit for having that kind of personality, did they?
Do you think that at any point there's going to be more females on Match of the Day?
Maybe eventually, but I do think it will take time. I don't...
It's very Gary Lineker, isn't it? it's him.
I think a female presenter would work. But at the moment with the pundits, I do understand why some football fans don't like it, because they say you have to have been there, seen it and done it. And it's very difficult if you haven't. But then again, pundits don't always talk about how it feels, you know, to be in a Champions League final, do they?
No.
You can be a pundit and be a woman and analyse the game, you know, just as well as any man can.
Look, it's entertainment, isn't it? You got to get people watching, and it's got to be a reason to speak. So it's very much about presenting as much as it is about factual things on the match. Yeah,
but there have been a number of really rubbish male pundits over the years. And
who's been the worst?
I'm not going to name any names, but we all know. A lot of, you know, most people know who they are.
What's the funniest moment? The blooper that's not been aired.
Well, the funniest thing I can remember was it was actually on air. It was when I was at Dagenham, and got caught in the storm. And Jeff and the boys thought it was absolutely hilarious, but because I was so new, I stood there. Basically, I felt like Bridget Jones. You know, when she becomes the presenter, and it's all kind of a little bit slapstick. I felt a little bit like that. But I'm glad that I stood there, because it kind of put me on the map a little bit. And it went viral, and people still talk about it to me now. And it is funny. And I was literally clinging onto the stanchion, and I would have blown over, and the lights flashing on and off. And it was hilarious. And the boys thought it was brilliant. But, you know, I should have just said, no, I'm not doing this anymore, because it was quite dangerous, but I didn't.
What was it like challenging Piers Morgan on his own show repeatedly? Because you did.
I mean, I thought, am I going to be able to do this? This is very difficult. Also, I do worry that my brain fog is going to come back. So I was a little bit nervous about that. I didn't want to sort of forget anything or facts, because if you're coming up against Piers, you've got to be on.
He's really good.
Yeah, you've got to be on.
I enjoy watching Piers Morgan.
I mean, he's great at what he does.
He tells the truth. He says he's got his heart on the sleeve, and he challenges people. Doesn't care who they are.
No, I mean, sometimes I think, does he actually think that, or is he just saying all of that?
Well, I don't know. But I think they must train them on that sort of stuff to mine for it. That's something I don't know.
I mean, he said this. There was this long diatribe, the introduction, and I was listening to it, and I was sitting there going, "Do you really think all of that?" And I don't think he does. I just think he's like a shock jock, isn't he? He's there to provoke, and he does it brilliantly. I just wanted to, especially the Mary Earp situation. The Joey Barton thing was different. But with the Mary Earp situation, I wanted to put her case across. And I think I did that well.
Exceptionally well. Really well. You know, you got to be proud of that.
I am, but I think I got the sense that he respects me quite a bit.
I got that sense watching it as well.
So it was when I got that sense, it was easier for me. If I'd have got a sense that he thought I was some sort of idiot,
I don't think
I might have sort of second guessed myself a little bit, but I didn't. I knew that he thought I was formidable in that sense.
If the listeners are going to take one action from this, what do you think they should do having listened to this?
I think they should. It's very difficult to give somebody self-confidence and self-esteem, but I think they should really just work on knowing who they are and being confident in what you can do, what you can achieve. And just don't listen to anybody else.
Are you allowed to listen to your supporters?
You can, but again, it's just someone else's opinion though, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
You need to know who you are, what you're good at, what you're not so good at. And if you're not so good at it, either don't do it or work on it. So I always, you know, when people compliment me, it's not that I don't believe it. It's like, oh yeah, thank you very much. But it's still just an opinion. As long as I know what's true, that's what counts.
I always say what my favourite bit is afterwards, and sometimes I pull out one of the things that you said. Now, you said loads of stuff. My favourite bit is actually basically learning your life story, how honest you've been. And that is refreshing.
Yeah.
What's been your favourite bit?
It's a bit like therapy in the sense that these are things I don't always think about. And it just feels good to get it out there again.
There you go. Bianca Westwood, thank you very much.
Thank you.